Invite's on its way.
A moment away from being live.
Oh, hey, I've just gone live because I couldn't not. Never mind. It always takes a minute or two to set up anyway. It's all good.
Okay, I am live also.
Oh, hey, and I've just retweeted your tweet. So,
we're actually live a minute early. Look at us.
I know. It's almost like reminds me of there was a sketch with they was doing a send up of Ryanair and done like an airplane like mockumentary, and because so many of the planes were taking off late, they just decided to send some off an hour early just to like balance it out. But obviously no one was on the planes and everyone was coming in complaining. They're just like, well, whatevs. I can see Greater Angular Rail doing that, bastards. Anyway, hello everyone. Sorry for that random beginning section, and welcome to Failcast F1, where we'll be talking all about Formula 1 and its latest antics. I'm Simon, or High Plane Games, over on YouTube, and as always, we have our taco friend extraordinaire, Mr. Definitely Zero, over on Twitch. How are you doing?
Buenos dias. I'm all good, my friend. I'm all good. Although you are smashing my little bottom on the championship standings. You're also French, I noticed.
Oh, do you know why? So, right.
Is this a Brexit protest, Simon?
This is not a Brexit protest, although I have just applied for a communications manager job in Brexit. So look out for jaunty little videos if I get that job about London's doomed. So I've got multiple careers going on in F1 2017, and basically because I wanted to see how the upgrades worked if you was like 3 or 4 seasons in, and my other playthroughs where I'm going at 100% races are taking quite a long time to get there. Mm-hmm. So I've done like a speedy 5-lap one, and I thought, I want to live out alternative days. So I've been French Olivier Panis in a Sauber, popping around at the back, jumping to Ferrari, and then taking the title, and the trophy didn't pop when I won the Drivers' Championship.
Mate.
So I'm currently going around doing it again. But I just wanted to see how the development cycles run like 3 or 4 seasons in, because last year's game, it was like the Sauber could only ever get just above like the baseline of a Mercedes. Its like whole lifeline was much further, and I just wanted to see if they balanced that out. It doesn't look like
have they? Because it occurred to me actually that the cars start so far apart and there's the same number of upgrade slots. So do the upgrades have greater effect on a poorer car, or
nope,
are you limited?
You're still limited. So a Sauber will, because they go at a slightly slower pace than if you do the practice sessions and stuff, you can catch them up. But ultimately your end goal is still less than what a Mercedes or a Ferrari's end goal will still be. So the same problem.
That sucks. Just for you, before we begin, over the many years we've been doing this together, I have occasionally referenced a drink that I indulge in that is blue flavoured, and that is today's beverage. It's backwards on my camera, but you can see there the flavour is blue. So that will be this week's beverage.
Superb. All of these
shall we dive into Russia then? I was quite handy here last year.
Yes, you were. I spied that this is still saying 0% AI for me, so I imagine...
It's saying 75 for me. Do you want to up yours? Because last time we had half the grid at 0 and half the grid at 75.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out... It won't let me do it.
Is it because I'm the host?
Yeah, but I'm hoping in theory that...
Oh, you can really taste the blue.
Blue, yeah, I've got no options to be able to do anything, so it'll just have to be.
Alright, I guess we'll see if we have the same problem again.
Yeah, if not, if we do, Cody has sorted it the hell out. This is now the F1 game of choice for the esports for F1, which Jack Nicholls will be commentating on next week. So they need to sort it out.
They really do.
Not that they've got AI in the actual event itself. But anyway, the real F1 world, you've got quite a lot of things on your to-do list to talk about.
Yeah, we've got a jam-packed one this week. Now I can't remember if it's good to take the softer tyres here.
Tyre wear is the lowest in the whole game here.
I'm still going to go for balance because the difference is one set of super softs and I can get them out of the way. Although it's saying I've got no sets of ultra softs for the race.
I think that's a lie.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like a lie.
Like Jolyon Palmer's career.
I've started to copy the streams across to YouTube, and I've got the same problem you ran into, but I'm too lazy to edit the videos, so now I need to jump start as well. It's all about setup here, and I had a really good setup last year, and this year, not so much.
Oh dear.
Not so much. But I still think I can tickle the top 3.
Okay. Is that even under the chin scrape?
Exactly, although we are being unsettlingly competitive this year.
We are. We're not doing our usual half-assed approach. This whole season was built around that pun.
I know, we ruined it. Can't even do the puns right now.
I know.
Well, as I'm holding up my end of the bargain by being deeply unprofessional, I didn't see the Malaysian Grand Prix. Should we cover that first? And you can fill us in, and then we can talk qualifying, and then we'll get down to the meat and potatoes.
Spanky spank.
Okay, the circuit's clear at the moment. We're good to go.
Okay, circuit's clear. Let's go out then. Excuse me. So yeah, the Malaysian Grand Prix, I thoroughly enjoyed it actually. Max Verstappen taking obviously his first win since his debut win in Barcelona last year, and it feels so much longer than last year.
It does.
With a nice, delicious move on Lewis Hamilton. What I found really, really funny was in the comments was on the YouTube videos, which obviously is where you go for wisdom, is everyone was bitching with Mercedes being really off the pace on Friday. They was going, this show's a fix, it's turning into NASCAR. I was like, no. Actually sit and watch a NASCAR race so you know how ruined that series is for fixing things. But Mercedes got good in the end, at least with Hamilton. Bottas continued his kind of I'm not really participating trend. Raikkonen, such a shame, he had good pace and didn't get to show any of it, but Vettel certainly showed Ferrari's form with a pretty stonking drive actually up through the field, some good overtakes. Other exciting things, I guess, was Jolyon Palmer nearly taking out Max Verstappen whilst busy taking himself and Kevin Magnussen off the track. It was such a Jos Verstappen Brazil 2001 nearly moment. I cried a little inside. Van Dorn continuing to show amazing progress, wiping the floor with Alonso quite convincingly. Oh,
I've been
you
there.
out?
Yeah.
How have you crashed there? I can see yellow on the track map.
I opened the doors while I was badly positioned on track.
Oh no! Do you need to restart?
We could, I think. We could.
Yeah.
If it allows that.
Right.
Does it allow that? I bet it doesn't, actually.
No, I've only got retire from session.
What a twat. Oh well, it'll make a nice burn from the back.
Well, we can always quit. Try to quit to menu and dive back in again.
We can try, but won't it just save?
we've not got to an end of a session, so we should be okay.
Let's try that then. Fucking hell! What a fool.
So while we set this back up again, see, professionalism is returning to the
Yeah.
Failcast edition. So whilst
I mean, sorry, go on. I was just going to say, I properly binned it as well. You'll enjoy that on the replay.
excellent, I shall have a wee Luke. What was I going to say? So Van Dorn wiped the floor with Alonso. We had Pierre Gasly make his debut and do a pretty sterling job. What was the other thing that I wanted to mention? The post-race stuff. The big controversy was Vettel and Stroll crashing into each other on the slowdown lap, which was hilarious.
I actually took the trouble to look that up. I did go and look that up because I knew it'd have to come up in the podcast. Give me your hot take.
So initially, I was like, "What the hell is Stroll doing?" Because we only saw onboards from Vettel, and it just looked like Stroll wasn't looking and creamed into the side of him. But actually, what happened later on, when you see it from Stroll's point of view, Vettel just dives into the corner from absolutely nowhere, way too close to Stroll. So it's like a 75-25 for me to Vettel. And again shows Vettel's hot-headed nature, where he thinks only for himself and the waves will part. But sadly, Lance Stroll and his beautiful eyebrows were not parting for anyone. But it was a sphincter moment, because instantly you think, oh god, that's a gearbox, that's a 5-place grid penalty, that's you on your back foot for the next race. Thankfully that's not necessarily the case, but a little bit squinchy bum moment. But the race was entertaining. Battles throughout. Recommended.
Can't help himself, can he?
No, he can't, Mr. Rhino.
Right, I'll get these changes made.
Thank you for joining, legend. No, Vettel can't help himself.
Yeah, I watched it. I did look up the moment, and I saw it initially from Stroll's perspective. Also, on today's Japanese quality coverage, DC laid the blame totally at Vettel's door.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to agree, to be perfectly honest. I see it as... we've had one or two incidents like this, actually, during the course of the year, where I think people have forgotten how wide the cars have gotten. And it's almost like Vettel forgot that the back of his car is wide. Because it's like he cleared Stroll with like the front 75% of his car, and then just that fat ass just sort of hooked into him.
Tap that ass, yeah.
Exactly. And certainly I don't see how Stroll was responsible. It's a cool down lap.
Yeah.
What rush was he in exactly? Like their relative speed difference was quite high.
Yeah, and he wasn't on the podium, so we didn't need to rush for that either. So,
No. Maybe he needed a wee.
Maybe he'd seen that Kimi had already got into the ice creams and he needed one before.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to eat all the Soleros. I mean, that's basically the only thing Kimi's going to do next year. Let's be frank.
Exactly, Mr. I'll take 4.
But I did indeed hear it was a good race. It led me to one conclusion that I quite enjoyed. That up until that Grand Prix, Max Verstappen's race start to victory ratio was very similar to Pastor Maldonado's, and that tickled me. Because technically on paper, if you just look at race starts to victories, Pastor Maldonado and Max Verstappen were on level pegging.
Like it.
And when a driver retires, that's really what you look at. So I enjoyed that.
Why'd you have to go and ruin it, Max? Never mind.
Yeah, I know. Ruined it. Hulkenberg's at least got the class to see it through.
Oh,
If you're going to be mediocre, do it properly.
Exactly. Actually, I know you've got a packed show, but who was it that was talking? I don't know. It was Mark Webber, on the Channel 4 coverage of the Japanese Grand Prix, who basically said Hulkenberg is not very talented at all and quite a poor driver. And I thought it was really interesting to hear Webber say
I've never heard that analysis of him before.
Yeah, he's like, well, Renault, because they was doing the old, oh, how long's Palmer got? Clearly only 2 races, but they were doing that kind of chat. But it was then saying, oh well, when Sainz goes over, he'll have a good benchmark, this, that, and the other. And Webber was basically saying, well, he can wipe the floor with Hulkenberg, I think, because the guy's never got on a podium, so he can't be that good, hey? He'll never be a world champion, I think was his exact words. And I was like, oh, what did Mr. Hulky do to you, Mr. Webber? So
yeah, it sounds a bit personal, that, doesn't it? Maybe he's best buds with K-Mags, and so, you know, it's like a gang allegiance or something, but
some kind of weird ball sacking going on.
I'm not happy with that lap at all. A lot of things went wrong.
I think we do have stretchy AI again.
Yeah, for me, it's very, very surprising to hear him say that. But you know, everyone's got their own opinions, I suppose. I mean, to be fair, his logic isn't totally skew-if or anything. Like I could see Sainz beating Hulkenberg. My fond hope is that they are fairly evenly matched and that it ends up being kind of a pretty hot team. But would I be shocked if Sainz wiped the floor with the Hulk? No, not at all.
No.
This car felt so much better when I was practicing before we went live.
Welcome to live racing. Yeah. Excuse me. So yeah, Malaysian Grand Prix was a good one. I did enjoy it, and it's looking
Fucking
extra
traffic.
Juicy. And I have to say, with Suzuka obviously coming up in a few hours' time around quali and in the wet conditions, the cars do look pretty damn amazing.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the camera angles actually. I don't know if you've noticed, but the camera positions have changed, and it means you get like a sweeping narrow angle of all the corners, and it shows the speed a lot more clearly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we've already given a quite damning assessment of Vettel's incident with Stroll, shall we move on to qualifying in Japan?
Yeah.
Because there were some key moments in there. Obviously, Q1 had an abrupt finish, and names like Stroll and Gasly, who could probably have improved, were denied that chance because Mr. Rogro binned it.
I'm going to call him
now,
Throgro.
obviously, yeah, Throgro. Now, I'm not going to be too harsh on him, actually, because a lot of drivers have been messing up. It's through all the practice sessions, in quali as well. Bottas nearly lost it in Q1. Yeah. We saw in P3, Raikkonen had a pretty specialist crash, actually, I thought. Losing it on the apex rather than before or after.
Because normally everyone bins it in Degna 2 on the way in, but Vettel nearly done the same thing on the way out. It was bizarre.
Apparently, I'm on pole so far. Provisional pole.
That's good, because it was telling me...
Although it's giving it to Stoffel Van Dorn.
Oh, it's doing that weird, as they cross the line, they go to pole until they've done their lap.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're on pole.
Sweet. So, looking at Roman's crash, I'm loath to sort of criticise him too harshly. But what I would say is the reaction of particularly Gunther Steiner, but also the camera cut to Gene Haas. both of them looking deeply unhappy with the situation. And I think rather than taking it as a criticism of Grosjean, I took it as a criticism of them just being fed up with the cost of F1. They obviously had an incident in Malaysia with a loose drain cover totaling Grosjean's car again, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Did you see on that, actually, in the press, they released a press briefing video on the F1 channel, and someone basically raised, who pays for the damage for that car, because that's the circuit's fault, not Haas's fault, or the driver's fault. And you could see they was all like giggling at the back, going, hee, thank you, whoever asked that question.
Interesting bug here. That I have managed to put wear on 2 sets of tyres, despite only having been out for 1 run.
What?
Yeah, I'm on my second set of Ultrasofts and they're worn 4%, but my first set are worn 2%.
Oh, mine's worn 1%.
What have we done? What have we done?
Game?
I tell you what, it's definitely going to be a one-stop race, I think.
Yeah, definitely a one-stopper.
I'm going out again. I don't think it's really necessary. Apparently, I'm now 4th.
No, that'll be as other people crossing the line. I wonder if it's taken our tyre wear from our aborted one and it just allocated that to the first tyres and it saved it on exit.
Maybe.
I might be giving the game way too much credit.
No, maybe. It makes a level of sense. But yeah, let's... Now, again, I'm not going to criticise Roman because I don't think the crash was entirely his fault. He did say that he was concerned maybe something was broken on the car because it wasn't handling correctly. I didn't expect fireworks from them anyway because we've seen Haas going backwards quite dramatically, I think, in recent rounds.
Yeah.
Something that we predicted would happen at the start of the season, but it seems to have come later on, actually. Which to me seems kind of odd because you'd think that they'd fall back at the start of the year and then catch up as the year goes on. But in this case, absolutely not. But certainly, whether it's Roman or K-Mags who's having a problem, it seems that the team themselves are just fed up of issues. I don't know if he was realistically expecting to be sort of challenging for podiums by now, but if he was, then he needs some new business advisors. And I still think we'll have Haas for another 2, possibly 3 seasons, and then it'll be good night Vienna. That's just my hot take. I do think that not necessarily Gasly, but I think Stroll probably would have made it out of Q1 were it not for that incident.
Yeah.
I forgot to open my doors, but at least I didn't crash.
Hey.
So there's that. Although he is, certainly off the pace of Sainz in the Toro Rosso. I didn't see how he did in Malaysia. A lot of people said he did very well. I don't know, but
yeah, he's only about 2 temps off.
Oh right, so he probably would have improved then because the gap when Grosjean went out was bigger than that. I'm tired of traffic on this circuit. Why am I getting so much traffic? God damn it, Merrickson.
Segway.
I noticed that I had an AI bug in pre-stream practice actually, where they would move off the racing line to let you through, and then move back onto it just as you're about to pass. So I'm watching for that this time.
I noticed that the AI do struggle on the opening lap to get around the turn where you binned it with the DRs.
With the DRs?
Yeah. Quite often.
There's a lot coming together there, is there?
Yes. Because they seem to want to go 3 wide and then realise that the AI can't cope with that. So that's why I'm quite keen to make sure that we're key 3ing so that we don't get knocked out in that kind of shenanigan.
So, moving on. Now, before we get on to what happened in Q2 and Q3, we already knew going into the quali session that there was a lot of penalties on the board. Again, Channel 4 very vocal in their criticism of it. I'm very vocal in my criticism of it. It kind of... I understand the necessity for the penalties, but it really does take the magic out of quali when, you know, half the grid has got a million place grid drop. Now, Kimi Raikkonen's fallen foul of that, Bottas, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso. And again, particularly because McLaren have started to look noticeably more competitive over the last few rounds, which you said before the show makes perfect sense because, you know, Honda would get good as soon as they weren't powering Fernando Alonso's car anymore. But still, just as he's starting to get good, and particularly because Van Dorn has started to wake up a little bit. You bastard. You bastard, Bottas. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. He ruined my lap, and then when I stopped to let him through, he turned into me and took my front wing off.
Yay.
He did, but it's all right. I'm definitely through. It's not a big deal at this point. I did not cut the corner. I don't have a front wing. And I went into the pits and came out again. Fucking idiot. Right, I'm not opening the doors. This is just an in-lap now. Hulkenberg again got the best of Mr. Face Palmer, as you christened him pre-show. Again, that's not necessarily super surprising. Van Dorn is interesting to me because he qualified outside the top 10, but he's now in the top 10 due to penalties. Does he still retain free tyre choice?
Yes.
Oh, well, then he's looking very good for the race. Because he'll be starting 9th now with free tyre choice. That's pretty handy. Lewis Hamilton ultimately took pole ahead of Valtteri Bottas, although his penalty drops him down to, I believe, 7th. So we have Vettel will start alongside, which is what we were all hoping for, I think.
Yeah.
A chance to see those two go head-to-head on... I'm 2/10 up, but I've got no front wing and I want to pit.
2 temps up with no front wing going around that corner.
I didn't really go around that corner.
Okay.
Not really. Right, super slow into the pits this time because last time I got a penalty for corner cutting. Or a warning for corner cutting. And then you've got the two Red Bulls lining up on the second row. Ricciardo getting the better of Verstappen this time, which actually surprised me a little bit. It strikes me that Verstappen is certainly the better qualifier in most circumstances. So I kind of expected coming into this that, particularly because he won last time out, that Verstappen would be enthused with not just confidence, but, you know, a little bit of will to compete, I suppose. It's been a very lackluster season for him, so I kind of expect him to come in with a fresh attitude. And to some degree, maybe he has. I saw a pre-race interview with him, a pre-session interview with him, and he seems quite chirpy. But still, I did expect him to get the better of Daniel, and he didn't. Be interested to see how the race pans out tomorrow, because they really are, when they're so close to each other, at the start, they really are each other's worst enemy, to be quite frank.
They are. And there's also, because the race is expected to be dry, what I found really, really interesting is that all the talk up of, because Max Verstappen won, now all of a sudden everyone is saying that the Red Bull was supposed to be suddenly now the best car. And Ricciardo and Max were both saying, like, no, it's really not. And then I had to sit and listen to Sky F1 talk about how it is now the best car and all of this kind of stuff. And I think it was only Johnny Herbert was sitting there going, I don't think it is. But I can't stand Simon Lazenby. I wished he'd just, like, fall off all of that broadcast together. But he just talks utter bollocks. He's going, well, they won last time out. He really took them on and all of that kind of stuff. And, well, I think it might be the best car. And I was like, just shut the fuck up. So, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not having that. I'm not having that. Channel 4 touched on it briefly as well, saying Helmut Marko was making the same claim that it's the best chassis on the grid. I don't think it is.
No.
I think I honestly would at this point think that
McLaren.
Chassis terms alone, I imagine the Ferrari is probably the superior. Actually, I think it works best in most circumstances.
Yeah.
The Mercedes, I it's hard to say, but it does hold the track very well. I mean, they have some problems, they have ups and downs, but it's not a bad chassis. I don't think Red Bull's quite on that level either. And to be honest, I think McLaren has a fantastic chassis.
Yeah. Agree with that.
Particularly around the front end, they do a lot of stuff that no one else does, and you can tell that it works. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty bold claim to start strutting around and saying stuff like that. But I've noticed that in the F1 press recently. It's like with Bottas. He's had a few lackluster rounds, and suddenly his career's over, and this is the end of him. And
yeah. Hasn't Hamilton just destroyed him? It's typical British press. British press all over.
Yeah. And they're very quick to turn.
Yes.
Like they were writing off Hamilton's season, and then he had he took the win in Singapore, and they said, "Well, that's it. The championship's over." I mean, obviously Malaysia didn't help things, but it was a very extreme thing to say coming out of Singapore that there was no chance that Vettel could still take the title.
No,
I don't know why you would draw that conclusion.
And he was less points behind. I think it was Brundle that said this. He's been less points behind at this stage in the championship on 2 of the 4 championships he won. So he was saying, it's fine. Let it get on with it. And I think Rosberg was this far ahead. I know he was more far behind when he took on Rosberg last year at this point in the season. So don't take it for granted. It can swing both ways. A bit like a bisexual.
It can. It absolutely can. I still think it's probably going to be Lewis's year. I'm getting a bit sick of it now. I can't find it in myself to outright hate Mercedes because they're just doing a fantastic job, and you can't really be upset with someone for that. But
no.
I am sick of them always finding solutions. I'd love it if they'd have a few more problems. Because they do, right? I mean, all through the season, their form's been quite up and down, certainly in practice and quali. But then they always pull it out of the bag. They always find a way.
Yep.
And in a way, I do think certainly the last 2 years of their dominance have been far more entertaining than Red Bull's dominant period ever was, or Ferrari's.
Yeah.
Because, Red Bull and Ferrari during their time, they didn't miss a beat. But even though Mercedes are occasionally missing beats and they are messing up, it's still incredibly dull to me that you can never discount them. Little bit frustrated with it now. I think it's also because the livery is so cripplingly boring that I get sick of seeing it. It's like the race overalls as well, incredibly boring, just black on white.
I'm not a
no
fan
character
of the
to that team at all.
I do like.
I was having a conversation with my Dutch friend, right, the Max Verstappen fan.
Oh yeah.
And he's getting into the F1 games now. He's got a small kid, so he doesn't get to play very often, but he's getting into it. And he's doing a career with Red Bull, and he said, "Well, I'm doing what you do, right? You say, oh, I always play these games as if it really was my career, and I'd make the decisions I'd make." And he said, "Well, the only team I'd really want to drive for is Red Bull because it looks like fun. Like there's a bit of character to the team." He doesn't like Williams at all. He thinks Williams are, flour and water, bland. But I was watching the qualifying build-up on Channel 4, and they had Karen Chandok running up and down the pit lane, and it was sticking the camera into each of the garages as he ran. And I have to say, if I was reporting to work that day, the one garage I would not want to be in was the Mercedes one. It just, even through that TV screen, I could smell the corporate culture.
Oh
It was very odd for me. I didn't think something like that would come across on TV, but it absolutely did. You could tell. Everyone looks very rigid, and there's something about the atmosphere in that garage when they put the camera in compared to all the others that, you know, it showed that is a huge global corporation, and, you know, no messing.
I think, to me, I hate turn 5 at this track when the sun comes down. You can never see the corner at all. For me, that kind of corporate culture and the sheer weight that carries, I think was a massive contribution to why Rosberg chose to stop when he actually got to the top. Because can you imagine having finally got ahead of Hamilton and winning, and then like, yay, I've done that, but then kind of where can you go from there to satisfy that kind of corporate giant going forward? Because I like, if Hamilton wins for Mercedes and like makes it a 3, I'm a bit of a loss to like, will 4 make any difference? I don't know. It feels all a bit like whatever you do is never enough, and so that's why I always kind of thought like with Rosberg, as soon as he won the one and was like, nope, that was all I ever wanted, I'm out the door, he knows he'd be a slave to that corporate wagon for the rest of his life, and always be made to feel that he's never good enough.
I'm really upset, by the way. While you were talking, I was 4/10 up on my best time, and Raikkonen just got in my way.
Boo, Kimi.
I don't remember traffic being so utterly atrocious here before, but it seems I think it's because we've got the AI problems, right? And some of the cars are just pootling around at 2 miles per hour.
Well, yeah, because Vettel was... Mind you, it seemed much more closer in the Q1 standings by the end, but for some reason Vettel was 8 seconds off the pace. But he was the only one.
Very disappointed with that lap. Very disappointed. Never mind, we press on. I'm trying not to take too much out of my tyres, but then, you know, it's quite hard here.
I find the tyre wear to be really alright here.
Where are you, me old China?
I've not completed my lap yet. I'm just into sector 3 now. Because, like, that whole corporate culture, so taking that just like into general daily life, so I work for the UK government. Boo. Yes, I know.
Boo.
And don't worry, I share a lot of that boo.
You dropped to P4.
It's really, really interesting that no matter what I do in the job that I do, I'm just one person in a massive sea of office politics and cross-government politics. And so I could change the world, but actually in about 2 or 3 hours time no one will care anymore, and the work will be undone and will have moved on and will have gone to somewhere else. And actually I find working in that environment to be like mentally fatiguing and deflating. So I wonder just how you get, I mean, it's clearly worked for them, because that kind of precision and efficiency is why they are probably at the top of their game now. But
yeah, I mean, it's how McLaren used to be.
Yeah, but I wonder how, like, you can sustain all of that, and do people stay in that team, and like, do you have lifers, or do you kind of reach that career burnout and then just go, God, sod this.
I'm going to Williams.
Yeah.
Going to Williams for a tea and a hobnob.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder...
It's an interesting point, actually, because, I mean, obviously we know there's such brand control now that in F1 drivers can't really be drivers necessarily. I mean, Vettel's probably the only one who speaks his mind every week, whether you want him to or not.
Honestly.
Yeah, idiots. So, I mean, to some extent, I think it permeates all the teams now that you can't just say things, you can't just do things in the way that once upon a time you could. But, and you know, we know Ferrari has a very strong corporate culture. Not that that's won them championships in recent years, but it does seem to just be so much more shirt and tie at Mercedes than anywhere else, and I imagine it probably is quite a demoralising place to be as particularly a number 2 driver.
Because you'd be automatically seen as the weak link in the chain.
Yeah, you're going to get the bulk of the criticism, I suppose, but also it just becomes an implicit assumption that you're not going to be in it to win it somehow.
What's your opinion on one of the things that did come out of Malaysia and into Japan, where both Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, but apparently it was Hamilton that's pushed for it the most, are going to take more active roles in decision making and like the race weekend management side of like Mercedes, so that they're more integrated into the whole team as a whole?
I think it's very interesting. It could pay off. There have been occasions, just some, where Hamilton has shown he's capable of making a spur decision and it paying off massively. Are you alright, Chief?
I just seen we're 200ths apart.
Oh, that's a spicy enchilada.
And I'm 3 tenths slower than you in Sector 2, but 3 tenths faster in Sector 1. And then there's just 300ths between us in Sector 1, sorry. You beat me in Sector 2, I beat you in Sector 3. But 3 tenths either way.
That is...
That's juicy.
That is fascinating. Where's Hamilton pulled that lap time? Oh, he's on ultra soft, that's why. Yeah, I think it could work out. I mean, Jensen as well was quite good at that. The ability to radio back and say, no, now is the time to change. And do it and make it work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's not a qualified engineer. And just as often as he's, had these revelatory moments where he's been able to turn a race around or, secure his position, just as frequently he's been on the radio complaining about something that would, with hindsight, have been a terrible decision. So it's very hard to say. And I think, to be honest, they give him far too much leeway in that team. And I don't think empowering him further is going to ultimately pay off.
Not if it means more.
But, the team has been built around him since he got there. That was probably what drew him there. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you reckon? Good call, bad call?
I think it depends if the good calls actually are good calls, because, like, they screw something up, and they decide to take, like, because this all came out of not knowing why in Malaysia they were way off the pace. And then working through it overnight, getting it right, but then apparently still not really knowing what the problem was, and it being a diva car and this, that, and the other. But they were saying that just operationally, because they were sent into a tailspin panic and didn't really know what to try, that's where all of this "let's get you all more involved" has come about. But I guess they could end up taking their car development off in a completely obscure tangent, or having an inner rivalry between each other, where the car's got to go in one direction and they might want opposing things, and then it stalemates the whole thing. So I think that's
really also managed. A good point. I mean, that was a plague of the 90s, actually, that teams tended to develop cars for one driver to the detriment of the other. And surely this would, if they go into the boardroom with two conflicting opinions, Bottas they can safely ignore in almost all circumstances. Lewis will take his ball and go home, right? And I think they're genuinely terrified about the idea of him leaving. And I don't know why, because there's such a depth of talent in Formula One. It's like today on Channel 4, they were making a big fuss out of Lewis Hamilton beating Michael Schumacher's 2006 lap record. And to be fair, that is the lap record. Congratulations. But it's comparing apples and oranges, surely. I mean, the cars were so totally different.
Yeah.
I've never put much stock in lap records because it's out of the driver's hands to a large extent.
It's down to regulation.
Exactly, and I think annual lap records would be, this is the fastest lap of the circuit this year or for this formula. But comparing his ultimate pace to Schumacher's ultimate pace is a false equivalency. Well, we both made it through, although closer to being out than I would have thought.
There was that magical AI playing its game again.
Really annoying me that now. Well, that segues on nicely to the last of the qualifying topics for me, and then we'll get on to the big issues. I wanted to talk to you about Force India. Now, the other day I had a very interesting Twitter conversation with a very nice woman by the name of Beatrice. I think she's Italian. She's an F1 journalist or an aspiring F1 journalist.
Okay.
And
not named after the Beatrice F1 team.
Well, potentially Beatrice Lola. Maybe that's a middle name. But she, obviously very passionate about Formula One, quite knowledgeable and everything. But we disagreed on quite a few areas, mainly over the McLaren-Renault switch, which everyone knows I'm famously not in favour of. But we talked at some length about Porsche's potential forthcoming entry into Formula One. And, she was arguing, well, I see Renault as a stopgap and then they'll team up with Porsche. And I said the same thing that you and I were talking about in the last episode, saying that's probably not going to happen because they are competitors in the commercial space. And that in a situation where McLaren began winning with Porsche power, the argument then becomes, is McLaren winning with Porsche's help? Or is Porsche winning and the car that the engine is in is irrelevant? Now, as someone who works in marketing, I think it's highly unlikely that an engine supplier that was also a producer of sports cars and supercars would power McLaren. It just seems very stupid. Why would you add to the prestige of a competitor? And then she said, well, where else would they go? And I argued that if I had a big sack full of cash and free engines right now and I was looking to have a successful partnership that, boosted the prestige of my business, the door that I would knock on would probably be Force India.
Yeah.
At this moment. And that sort of took her aback quite a bit. Because she said, well, they don't really have the engineering talent and the engineering depth for that to make sense. And I said, do you know what? I've made the same argument for a long time, but look how they've continually proved me wrong. Now, I just heard you say Williams, and to be honest, the Williams, Martini, Porsche makes a lot of sense as well, and that was the other team that I mentioned. But I focused particularly on Force India because they are knocking on the door of the top three. In quali today, they line up behind the three fastest teams. They are consistently both cars in the top 10. I just got taken out by Verstappen.
Oh no!
Yeah, he punted me round. Same corner again as last time. I opened the DRS and he turns into me, and that's it. So I'm starting 10th.
Oh no!
What a bastard!
Oh, yeah,
But it's alright. It means I can. Can you see it?
Yeah. Strewn in
Nice.
the middle of the road.
Surprised they've not like paused the session or whatever.
Yeah, they don't.
I just
do any
noticed you're
betting
number
quali-
69, you filthy animal.
Yes.
I just noticed as well that it has carried over our numbers and helmet designs from our career mode, where previously we were playing as Grosjean and Magnussen and had their numbers.
Oh, okay.
So there's that too. Anyway, yeah, I mean, for me, like, Williams would probably be a no-brainer, but if you're looking for like an immediate result and you're thinking, well, Red Bull are most likely going to tie up with Aston Martin, Cosworth, but, you know, Porsche could very reasonably end up there. You know, the German-Austrian connection.
Yep.
But they're not going to team up with Mercedes or Ferrari for obvious reasons. Not going to team up with Renault, obvious reasons. Not going to team up with McLaren for the reasons we've outlined. Which team would you go to? Which one would make the most sense? Which one has got a competitive chassis? Which one is ready to take the big step up? And I would argue it's Force India. Williams, I'd probably put in that group as well. I think they would benefit from being a works outfit again massively, but the problem I have with Williams compared to Force India right now is that Force India continually overachieve, whereas Williams seem to... They find something, and then they lose it again just as quickly.
Yeah. Sorry. So my comment was Force India are trashing Williams.
Okay.
So I would agree that Force India would be my first attempt, especially now that they've got the beautiful magnesium water money coming in. So that puts them stable if a certain Vijay Mallya ends up being taken away. Because you always kind of wondered what would happen if he disappeared. Not that he actually... I can't work out if he actually does anything with the team or not, or if he's just like there for like show in the background whilst he makes dodgy deals. So yeah, I would go Force India first, Williams second. Easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And my other argument that tied into that really was that I think between the two, your money would go a lot further, a lot faster at Force India than it would at Williams.
Yeah.
I think the gains Williams would make would be far more incremental, whereas, Force India with, just a bit more cash and, the engineering support of a works deal could realistically start winning races very, very quickly. I think Williams' form is far too mercurial, particularly on the chassis front. I also think that because they're quite a well-established team, they're profitable, they've got a big factory and a lot of facilities, the money really is only... There's no testing really anymore. I mean, the money is obviously going to be helpful, but I think it would make such a huge difference to Force India, a team that's already delivering with far less technical capacity.
Yeah.
It's just a no-brainer for me. Beatrice completely disagreed, and that is her prerogative, of course. But I think Force India have a hell of a lot to be proud of, and I think particularly at some point in the next few years, Gene Haas is going to begin looking at them with not a tiny degree of envy, because based on the logic of his model, Force India is exactly the sort of team that he considers to be inviable, that it's not a viable model. it's too expensive to do it yourself, and it doesn't deliver results. You're not competitive. You're far more competitive by shouldering a smaller portion of the burden and being reliant on a more established technical partner. But I think we're starting to see now the flaws in the Haas model, because we saw them anyway in the fact that they didn't really understand their car. But
Yeah.
now, as they're really struggling for pace, and it's becoming really obvious that they're struggling, I think you're beginning to see that they just don't have much control over their own destiny.
Yeah. If you don't have the intimate knowledge of building and knowing and designing everything, you can only get your knowledge to go so far. And you can only control the components that you are streamlining in, so it's almost like you're reliant on everyone else's chain of command for you to get the stuff that you need. So, yeah.
Look at you on pole.
Well, it's Massa and Stroll second and third, so I don't really think it's real, if that makes sense.
It's telling me you're on pole.
Oh yeah, no, it says that I'm on pole, but I've only got Massa and Stroll behind, which makes me think, where's everyone else and why haven't they done a time yet? It'll do the magic AI.
Yeah, they'll do the magic AI and you'll start fifth or something, but
Yeah.
still. I'm very disappointed that Verstappen took me out. It makes me very nervous for the race, actually.
You got plenty.
It makes me very nervous for the race.
Yes, just watch yourself around that corner in the first lap.
Now, moving on, I wanted to talk about Sauber. And before I get into Merrickson and his recent comments and the future of their line, I would like to talk about them in relation to Haas, because given the money that has recently been freed up for Sauber, the investment that's going on in the team, the large-scale recruiting that they're undergoing, I would posit that it is not impossible, although it probably is unlikely, but it is not impossible for them to supplant Haas next year. And the reason I say that is that this year, they had the year-old power units. They have not been developing the car, and Frederick Vasseur has said that they have started super early on next year's car, and that it's going to be a complete, same thing Williams have said, that we're just going to throw it away, basically, and we're going to start afresh.
Good.
And I think Sauber is a team that was, I know they've had, 4 or 5 seasons now, really in the doldrums. Actually, no, close 3 to 4 actually, because they were at the end of Perez's time there. They were very competitive, and obviously Hulkenberg was there, and they were solidly midfield.
Yeah, it took them a while, but they got there.
So I do believe they are capable of delivering, and I think they've just been starved of cash. And I think Longbow Finance came in and were trying to keep the team running with a skeleton crew and skeleton budget, and they've only now begun to realise that that's not going to make their investment pay off. And I think the money has been released now to rebuild the team and get them delivering again, so they can cash out, which would be good, of course.
Yeah.
And I actually expect Sauber to be improved for next year. Now, tying into that, Marcus Ericsson has come out and said, we are losing 0.3 seconds at least per lap just on weight, because we've not been developing the car, so we're not trimming the fat, as it were. And that the gap between Sauber and the Haas's is probably the team next up the road at this point. Isn't as big as it appears in truth, because they are running a car from with a spec that was locked in much earlier in the season than the cars ahead of them, and that the weight they believe they could lose would be enough for at least 0.3 seconds. That's a healthy level of skepticism. I'm totally with you. I can just as easily see it not happening, but I don't know why people have suddenly decided that Sauber are useless, and they've become sort of the manner of the current season somehow. They're the butt of the joke somehow, and Force India were once in this position.
If you go back to 2008, 2009, they were last in the championships.
And there's an ebb and flow, and a few years ago, Mercedes were something of a joke.
Yep.
They came in, spent a lot of money, they took a championship-winning outfit and massively underachieved. And then once they found speed in the car, they couldn't manage tyre wear. And do you remember, they used to qualify on pole and then drop back to 8th on the first 2 laps.
Yeah.
And Sauber haven't forgotten how to build a car. Haas never learned. I could see them swapping places very, very easily.
Yeah. I agree. I think excuse me, the elements are there for Sauber to do a very, very good job again.
Yeah, but Sauber doesn't have the money to do anything good like Merck and Force India did. Sauber WCC 2021 high.
Got 2 different people chiming in.
Actually, that's not technically true. Sauber were broke last year, but since the new owners came in, they announced recapitalization earlier in the season. They are hiring at least 100 new people for the factory, and they turned down the Honda money in favour of retaining Ferrari power units and reinvesting from the shareholders. So they're not on the verge of going bankrupt anymore.
No.
And they have world-class facilities at Hinwil. The problem has always been with Sauber recently is that they had this amazing high-tech factory that BMW built when they were partnered, but they didn't have the money to use it. Yeah. So obviously, prototyping parts and using the wind tunnel they have there and everything, all of it has operational overhead costs. And they just weren't developing. That was the problem. They didn't have the money to use the technology they had at hand. Now they've got the cash and hopefully soon the staff. And staff's always been kind of a touchy subject for Sauber because it requires people to relocate. It's a lot harder for them to hire or Toro Rosso to hire than it is for someone like Williams or Mercedes or whatever, because particularly the teams in Britain are all very closely located in what we call Motorsport Valley, and so it's very easy for people to hop between teams. Force India actually benefits in that regard. Actually, if they got some more investment, it'd be quite easy for them to potentially hire some very interesting talent. Sauber always have the problem that they probably have to pay over the market rate to get people to relocate,
and also to a country that has banned motorsport after deaths, and it's still banned to this day. So it's almost like going into a black market if you're going over there.
Although actually, Formula E is going to have an event there. The first motorsport event in Switzerland. In what is it? Something ridiculous, like 75 years.
Yeah, they banned it in the 50s after. Was it at Sherrard Reims where I've forgotten the name of the driver, but he lost control flying over the bump and went into the crowd, and it killed like 60 people in the 50s. That was
classic F1, you rapscallion.
Yes, no, it was the biggest fatality that happened in motorsport because the car went into the crowd essentially, so it killed about 60 people.
Safer than F1.
I don't say that now, Chimpy, because if they go over to Switzerland and someone conks it in there, Switzerland will never have a car go over 10 miles an hour ever again.
That's part of the reason I've loved Sauber so much, by the way. That's a passion project, isn't it? Starting a racing team in a country that's banned motorsport.
Yeah, exactly. Mind you, good old Peter Sauber sitting there chomping away on a ginormous cigar, wondering why this is a problem. So yeah, it's and we have a soft spot for Sauber anyway, and at least with the hundreds members of staff that are going to be signed up, we know that Malaysia can't sign up 300 and then have some kind of battle royale reality TV show shootout for places.
I'm still waiting for my compensation money to come through.
The Apprentice.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen the adverts. Where the friendly guy comes on TV and says, "Were you signed to drive for Sauber Formula One in 2014? You could be entitled to compensation."
Cuts to Guido van der Gaard sitting there. Yeah.
I called Compo for you.
Yeah. I walked
About
out
my
into
renewed
FP1 and I cried in my helmet. I called Compo for you, and I got £15,000 and an all-you-can-eat buffet of memes that now allows me to be a little Twitter god. Ever since, gotta love a bit of Guido. Guido's up there with Taki Inoue for entertaining Twitter accounts.
I saw an amazing tweet from Taki Inoue last week, and I was going to send it to you, and I forgot. But he was mocking himself.
Oh, he was doing that today. Actually, he put up his qualifying lap, which was a 1:46 or something from 1995, and then he was like, Lewis Hamilton's lap 1:28, and he went measure of the driver, and that was all it had. And then in the comments, people going, "Taki, you weren't that shit." There is like 20 years worth of car difference.
Speaking of jokes, intentional or otherwise, did you catch Stoffel Van Dorn's comment where he laid a burn on Honda without realising he'd done it?
No.
So he was in an interview and he was asked, having driven this track in Super Formula, how does it feel to drive it in F1? And he said quite innocently, "Well, the straights are kind of the same." And apparently Eric Boullier was laughing at the comment, and Hasegawa was very, very upset about it. But he didn't do it on purpose. But still, 10 out of 10, Stoff. Nice job.
Yeah, you did good. Oh Christ! Yes, they do chop across.
Yeah, I just noticed.
I got a collision with Raikkonen error, and I didn't even touch him. There we go. Ooh, Bottas is very slow.
Oh, this is horrible. They're running like 2 and 3 wide. Please stop. I'm scared.
Yeah, I hate lap 1 round this track. It never goes well.
It's interesting because this should be a track that I hate, but I actually quite like it. And it's just unusual because normally, anything with no runoff, I'm an old school driver, I suppose, where I like being able to completely miss the apex of the corner with no consequences. But I have survived lap 1, thus far undamaged, but I'm coming up on Massa now, and we know how that is. You get into the same postcode as Felipe Massa, and it's game over.
Chimpy just saying in the chat.
Oh, he's just put the moves on Bottas. You cheeky rascal.
Bottas was going really slowly round turn 3 for me. I wonder if he's been given a really crap AI difficulty level number or something.
Yeah, he has, and so's Raikkonen.
Okay, that explains why Raikkonen just wanted to chop me round turn 3. I had to actually back out of it.
Are you leading still?
No, I'm second. Of course, the game gives Hamilton like the most AI.
I didn't hear that comment.
JOTT says if they could add some grass in there somewhere, he would like the circuit more. I do find that this circuit reminds me a little bit of Valencia, but purely in terms of it is just like driving around in a tarmac car park. And I think the problem is that no matter how many helicopter sweeping shots that you can do around all of the old Olympic venues, when you're actually watching the racing, you don't see them. And so that's why it looks kind of like just my eyes have been greyed out. It would just be like having someone copy and paste the Mercedes livery all over the screen for me. And that's all that I could see.
And for me, I mean, I don't know, I quite like it. I do. I mean, I was always surprised actually how long Valencia lasted on the F1 calendar because I did not like Valencia at all.
No, it had no flow to it whatsoever.
to be honest, I'm not necessarily a fan of Circuit de Catalunya either.
I don't like it. They ruined the final sector. I noticed
Yes.
that MotoGP is going back to the old final sector.
Really?
Yes, they voted it through.
Good on them. Good on them.
So I don't know if Formula One will follow suit or not. But because it was from MotoGP that chicane got put in.
Ironic, eh?
now
Massa,
they've
get out of my way.
And they've gone sod this.
Race officials have enabled.
Well, as we've segued onto tracks, even though it wasn't
sorry.
on my list for this episode, let's do it because we have a lot of potential new tracks to look forward to, actually. And I'm curious as to your thoughts about them. So,
Ooh, okay.
the city circuit in Copenhagen is the one I'm actually most excited about. I've been saying for a long time that I think it would be interesting to have a Grand Prix in one of the Scandinavian countries.
Argentina.
I realise that Denmark technically isn't part of the Scandinavian peninsula, but still.
It'll do.
I'm very excited about that prospect, depending on how it's done. I've been to Copenhagen. It's a beautiful city, and I think it would, if done correctly, it would lend itself to it quite well. The problem is with this obsession with city circuits is that although it makes the events a lot more accessible to the general public, it doesn't necessarily equate to good racing. It's alright being able to draw huge crowds from the city's population, but if the track is inherently bad for racing, then you're not really going to achieve anything.
No.
The other... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, and then people don't necessarily come back the following year if they've not been entertained, because I think you can get away with it once, where everyone's like, ooh, an F1 car, ooh, an F1 car. But then, like, once you've been there for a couple of hours and you've seen them just drive past, because you only get to see them for a couple of seconds every 90 seconds, then if you're not entertained with any of that, you don't come back the following year afterwards because it becomes a procession. So, and I was looking at the Copenhagen map, if this is the one I'm thinking of, and it seemed very straight.
Yes.
With a couple of 90-degree turns, and I thought it looks very fast, and it couldn't have been more IndyCar if it tried, and I really didn't like the layout, and but I could see how they'd gone round a street circuit and tried to make it as overtakey-esque as possible, but I still
Well, 'cause
was
that's the
bored.
historic criticism, isn't it?
Yeah.
That street circuits are not conducive to overtaking. No, I mean, I kind of agree with you. Like, I wasn't necessarily inspired by the layout, but the location,
Azerbaijan.
I think, is an excellent one. I just heard mention of Azerbaijan. I have a problem with Azerbaijan, but I don't think it's suitable for the current formula.
Everyone seems to now love the circuit because of this year's race.
You're managing it well.
But I have to say, I think the circuit is utterly awful. I hate it.
It's grown on me a little bit, but that's only because in career mode this year I really nailed Circuit 2, particularly Sector 2, particularly the uphill bit in the old town. I always used to chicken out there, but now I can take it like a boss, so suddenly I'm in love. The other tracks that are being juggled around is there's a new track under construction in the Netherlands. And they've already put out on YouTube, you can see like a virtual onboard lap of it.
Oh, I've not seen that.
And I actually quite like it, though of course Zandvoort wants to host again. And for me, I think F1 would be stupid not to have a Dutch Grand Prix at this point with Verstappen where he is.
Yeah.
Whether it's a new track or the old track to me is almost immaterial. I don't know, but what do you think of Zandvoort?
I like Zandvoort, but having watched lots and lots and lots of lower Formula E race round there, they are almost always a procession. And
you've taken the words out of my mouth.
I
don't
just
think,
goes,
particularly with the new
yeah.
formula, I don't think it's necessarily going to produce anything stellar. Whereas the new track does look like they've really put some thought into it.
Okay.
I won't sort of try and pick it apart at this point because I think everyone should just go check out the video.
Yeah, I didn't know that existed.
But I would definitely like to see a new Dutch Grand Prix, and for me either is fine. Bring back Zandvoort, don't bring it back, whatever. I just think the time is right, and it's good to see F1 returning to its roots in Europe a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, moving on, McLaren have proposed a circuit in Woking, the Woking Grand Prix.
I enjoyed those videos. They were good.
Yes, they were.
There was far more effort to that than what really should have happened, which is what made me chuckle. It brings me back to the days of needless F1 car launches on volcanoes.
But of course, with the form in the toilet like it was at the time, what else were they going to do?
Yeah.
And that's something that sparked a lot of conversation. And of course, there's been talk about a Grand Prix inside the city of London. I really don't see a Grand Prix inside London working because I've been to London and it's mental. And I just, infrastructure-wise, it just seems very overambitious, don't you think?
I agree. I think it would cost the capital too much money, and I don't think they would want that to happen. And having seen like some of the stuff where they, so I work right next to where they done the Formula E demo, and the amount of drama and controversy that caused, where they just shut down one of Westminster bridges for like a couple of hours. I can't see them doing that for a 3-day event. Like Formula E gets away with chucking it in some Battersea dog farm, you know what I mean? Battersea Park, dog home, for a day, and there's like a prep day or like a close down at the end of the evening or whatever. And that's why Formula E is able to do that type of stuff, because it's self-contained to a day. As soon as you start adding on the complexities of shutting down things for 3 days, having a track and like press thing the day before, you're probably looking at shutting down something for a week. The capital couldn't cope. So
I have to say, because Berlin hosts a Formula E race, which I recommend. Like, I know a lot of people are skeptical about Formula E, but you should go to an event. They're very, very good, very accessible, very, very reasonably priced, like insanely reasonably priced. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot going on. The racing is better than I think a lot of people give it credit for. The cars are very cool. The sound is an acquired taste, but I've come to appreciate it. But the point is, I was very impressed by how non-disruptive that event is. Now, I know the first and third year they just held it on the airfield, but we did have one street race because the airport was used to house refugees. And in those cases, like you say, the event is relatively compact. There's no need for permanent pit garages because they camp in tents, and all the sort of stuff that they bring along to the events is very, very mobile. It's it's designed to be packed up quickly and conveniently and to travel around.
yeah.
So they are minimally disruptive, and because it doesn't quite have the same level of glamour and pull as Formula One does, it also doesn't put the same strain on the transport network. In fact, when we attended the Formula E races first and third year, it was just like any other day on the U-Bahn. I don't think Formula One can quite get away with that, and I'd actually be curious how it is for the people in Baku, for example, because Monaco's kind of special. I think Monaco has always found a way to make it work. But Azerbaijan is a proper city full of normal people, and I'm very curious how disruptive it is to have the whole city centre locked down for Formula One for 3 days. So I agree with you. I think London's pretty unfeasible.
Especially with Azerbaijan not really having the grandstand capacity to be able to make it a profitable tourist attraction for the city, if that makes sense. Because the city's closed down for the actual event itself. There's only 48,000 grandstands in, of which I believe most of them weren't even... It wasn't sold out, if I remember rightly, for the first event at least anyway. And they were having to give tickets away to try and get people in. Sounding suspiciously like Korea to me.
That actually happened to me at Formula E though. I bought a €5 ticket, which is just access to the event. But the way the track is, you can just walk around the entire circuit. I could watch from wherever I wanted, pretty much. But a guy came over and said, would you guys like some grandstand tickets? Because we have some spares. And obviously they don't want it to look empty on TV.
Yeah.
And that surprised me, actually, because the event was very well attended. But I guess most people, I mean, Berlin is a city where people appreciate, saving a bit of cash. I guess a lot of people just bought the same sort of tickets we did. But yeah, it definitely happens at these events. But please continue. Sorry, I just wanted to jam in an anecdote there where it didn't quite belong.
No, that made sense. But I've forgotten what I was going to say. Because I can't remember what I was talking about.
You were talking about filling up the grandstands at Azerbaijan.
Yeah, so, like, Singapore say that it generates X amount of profit and they can physically track that kind of numbers in. Azerbaijan is much more of a niche environment, and so I wonder what they gain from it, and do the ends justify the means? Because it's a poorer country in theory, for the average person, so maybe like the gains really push it up, but I don't see that happening with
that's actually a really good point. Actually, I do wonder who goes, because like as an international F1 fan, one who travels to races or whatever, I imagine it's probably quite fairly low down on your list of places to go, right? I mean, I'd love to attend the Singapore Grand Prix, but I have almost zero interest in going to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, exactly. I had actually, he's a sim racer chum, Ollie Murius Mirvo, Mr. Pinky. He went to the he basically flew so that he could do practice qualifying in the race for Singapore. Loved it. Had dinner in the airport and flew back that evening back to Norway. And it was just he really wanted to do the Singapore Grand Prix, so he done it.
Me too, but it cost like £11 billion.
Oh, I know.
It's the same. I'd like to do Japan as well, and Italy and Belgium. That's my top four. I hate to. I don't want to scare anybody here, but you and I could be in a racing situation very shortly.
I have been watching you creeping up on my rear over those last 5 or 6 laps, particularly.
I like big butts, and I cannot lie.
I've got a big butt.
Which is a really bad combination at a job interview. Problem is, we're coming up on traffic now, and traffic messes me up far more than it messes you up, I think. You seem a lot more comfortable running close to other cars. I don't trust them. I've got my tinfoil helmet on.
This isn't Signs, it's not Mel Gibson.
Shit, I completely forgotten that I have to pit at some point during this Grand Prix. The tyres just feel excellent.
I know, that's why I said the tyre wear is really low around this circuit. I find this is the easiest on tyre wear for me by a long way, and I'm sliding this car around like a moose.
Are we catching Hamilton?
No.
Boo.
No, he's a good 10 odd seconds up the road. No, it's Mr. Jolyon Facepalm.
Oh, shall we talk about him for a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, because that makes a nice segue actually into a couple of topics. So, what is your... Now that we're waving goodbye to Jolyon Palmer at the end of this race, a little bit earlier than maybe he would have liked, maybe not quick enough for most of the rest of the paddock and all of the fans watching, what has been your favourite, most memorable Jolyon face Palmer moments?
This sounds a bit lazy, right? But my actual favourite Jolyon Palmer moment, my favourite face Palmer, has been quite recently actually, and I want to volunteer his spins in Malaysia that were caused by the wind.
Was it coming from his mouth?
That to me was my favourite moment, just because it is such a schoolboy excuse. It was the wind. I enjoyed that massively. But it's kind of hard to pin it down for me, actually. I mean, that's certainly my favourite. But, you know, if we're talking top three, I think any time that he races badly and then comes up with some over-optimistic explanation as to why he's completely failed.
Careful with Hulk.
I enjoy massively. I've lost a lot of time to you now because of that. Because he's done it quite a lot throughout the years, you know, like I think towards mid-season last year, where he was being spanked by K-Mags, and he was, you know, it's before he sort of came alive a bit, didn't he, in the second half of the year, and started remembering that he was supposed to be driving the car.
Yeah. You're a champion, Jamie.
And yeah, the amount of times he sort of said, well, you know, next week it'll be better because X, Y, and Z, and it never was. And you sort of wondered if he was talking to himself or to the press. Mm-hmm. The same thing happened earlier this year, actually, where do you remember when Hulkenberg got the floor upgrade and he did not?
Yes.
And he was saying after the race, because something went wrong, didn't it? He didn't finish. And I recall him. I recall him saying, I was scared to run into the back of you there, so I stopped my sentence and I overbraked. He was saying something like, oh, yeah, well, there was a big difference, but that's down to the floor, and next week I think will be a lot more evenly matched, and of course, they were not. They were many things, but that was not one of them. What was your favourite face Palmer moment?
I still think... I think the Monaco crash in the rain, straight out the bat, was hilarious.
That was a good one.
I also think the Hungarian Grand Prix spin, when he was running 10th after actually like putting together a good weekend, and then we was all like, yes, Jolyon has come of age, and then he was like, nope. Self-sabotage.
Just nope.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he had some kind of self-harming issue and was just desperate to not. What was I going to say? There was one other thing as well.
Oh, you cheeky rascal, putting Verstappen between us like that.
You're welcome.
Max, get out of the way. Bastard. He couldn't decide if he was going in the pits or not.
And Hamilton's in, so we are now 1-2, baby.
Scary. I'm feeling very nervous about this. I think you've got this in the bag because I'm too scared to attempt an overtake. I was right up behind you before, and I was bricking myself that I'm going to take us both out.
Excellent.
You've Hamiltoned me I am your Rosberg.
Oh no. Does this mean that I now have to do really awkward Calvin Klein selfie shots where I'm...
Yes, you do, and you also have to, at the end of this race, you have to say that I ran a really great race, and that, you know, it could have gone to either of us, and then caveat it at the end by saying, but he had nothing on me.
Yeah. Thanks to the fans. Hashtag blessed.
Hashtag blessed. Thanks to my dog for always being there for me.
Not Nicole. The other one.
No. No.
She's a dog.
Do you think he'll go into music after he finishes his F1 career?
I think he'll try. I think it will be the most cringeworthy... You know when you think of, like, things cringeworthy world champions have done? I can't think of anyone, like, who has the potential to genuinely make F1 cringe again more than him.
I don't know. I mean, it has been a long while since Jacques Villeneuve's album.
But to be fair, actually, so I've listened to part of that, and it's not terrible. It's just everything that, like, middle of the road rock that could send you lightly to sleep entails.
Yes, it is. But I agree, it's not terrible.
Yeah, but I still got it ingrained in my head. Looking at me, looking at you, looking at me, looking at you, whatever it was. It was just... It's the kind of thing that you get in Christopher Guest movies. So like Spinal Tap, where it's played straight face but for laughs. It's like a mockumentary.
I'd watch the shit out of that though. If Flavio Briatore was his record label manager as well.
I would watch a fly on the wall documentary on his life just for the lols.
I am actually curious how he is privately, to be fair. And I'm not normally one for celebrity culture, actually, but he's an interesting guy, Hamilton, to be fair.
Mm-hmm. I'm pitching this out, by the way.
Oh, so was I.
I can go again.
No, please.
That's a good
almost
job
lost
that
it
we
there. I
said
don't know
that.
if you saw.
No.
I almost had a DERS-related incident again.
Uh-oh. Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, another one. Plus, you know, Mercedes rules, you're first on track, which means you get to pit first.
Okay.
And I have to hope now that I have enough speed to do the old undercut. Look at this, proper racing action between us for the first time in 8 years.
I know.
I mean, we've been on track before, but on different... You know, we've raced each other before, but on different strategies, or we've been racing for 15th position or something. But this is, I believe, the first time that we... it's come down to strategy, that we both have fairly even pace. And neither of us has had a big accident or a problem or whatever. I'm quite enjoying this.
I remember... No. There was 1 year in the Caterhams at Suzuka. Where
that was a proper race.
The infamous double scream, where we both wanted to take each other off, but both screamed in avoidance. I have that on a little mini video replay somewhere, where I looped it on like 6 or 7 times. If I just go,
Actually, that was a good moment, to be fair. I remember that. Didn't you, in the end, back out?
Yeah, because I was so shitting myself. A bit like what you were doing earlier. Discretion's the best part of Valor.
It is. It is that. And I think it would be just... It would be peak Failcast, but it would be super embarrassing if we took each other out.
How forcing.
But it would be like Failcast level 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right, come on, pit crew. Don't let me down. Ten laps to go. Are you coming into the second to last corner now? I just realised that I got the pit exit procedure wrong, so you've got past me.
Oh no!
Massively. I was sat there revving for ages because I couldn't get the optimum RPM.
Well, you were faster than me, so you've got 10 laps to reel it back in, baby. You've got the pace on me. You're a good 2 to 3.
I was very fast here last year, though.
Yes, you were.
But I was also super fast at Bahrain, and you panned my bottom in Bahrain this year. Partly because I made a stupid strategy decision, but you know that is my hallmark. But you were genuinely faster over a race distance, so. But you're right. The distance between us now is sort of about the right size for us to have a last lap duel.
Yeah, because this is kind of the distance between us after you got past Massa, so it took you 10 laps to get back to me, so we're good. Still, I think. Diving back very briefly to F1 and Palmer and all of the stuff that's going on there, I wanted to talk very briefly about Martin, the FIA man that no one knew existed until this week.
Ah, yes. Yeah. It upset particularly Red Bull, didn't it?
Yeah, although speaking to a lot of people, they're all quite angry. So this guy apparently excuse me, gets to go round and look at people's F1 tunnels and is the person that everyone in the teams goes to get their designs approved to see if they're going to have if they're going to build a double diffuser type thing, which is highly divisive and like filling a black hole in the spirit of the rules or something like that. He gets to know about all of those in advance before they happen. So the fact that Renault then sign him and give him only a 3-month gardening leave means that he's privy to absolutely everyone on the grid's work. And it's not necessarily about them taking over those things, but it's also about Renault not having to spend the money investing to find out if those things work or not, because he'll already know if they have or haven't worked.
Yeah.
By virtue of all the teams going to him and saying, "Oh well, we're going to pursue this." Oh, actually, no, we're not. Blah 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 blah. And actually, there's just as much value in knowing what doesn't work as to what does. But it's the FIA that everyone seems to be angry with, not the guy and not Renault, because in general they expect a 6 to 12 month leave. Apparently, Mercedes were trying it again. Mr. Corporate were saying 12 to 18 months, but they're like the outlier. So Renault, amazingly, were saying that they are prepared to actually extend the gardening leave for this guy from fastest lap against the clip by fastest lap. Love it. They're prepared to let this guy go for another 3 months or so. Oh, Van Dorn. Ooh, that was closer than I'd liked. So that he doesn't start in January, he starts in April, so therefore kind of misses the start of the season. Although quite how you can monitor someone's gardening leave and be like, don't go to their pub, don't go round their house.
Yeah.
No one
Throw
offer
your phone
him
in the
tea
bin.
and biscuits. Yeah. Get out that WhatsApp group. Yeah. It's impossible to control, but yeah, it's an interesting scenario, but again shows yet another step of intent for Renault, ditching Jolie off Palmer and getting signs in, brewing up their technical team. They seem to have an awful lot of technical directors though, which makes me slightly Caterham worried, but yeah.
Well, as long as none of them is the cleaner, then you're all right.
Or just some guy that buys a team for the race so that he can go onto the TV. I wonder what happened to that lawyer guy that bought Caterham.
Finbar?
Yeah.
I liked Finbar. He was a bit of a boss, I thought.
Yeah, he handled himself really, really well and not like a pillock. Because if I was in charge of an F1 team for just one race, my God, it would just it'd be hilarious. I'd have.
I think he found his true calling, and I think he's probably quite sad to have to go back to the world of corporate law.
Yeah.
He seemed quite at home running an F1 team. I remember you, Finbar.
Although the name Finbar does now make me think that maybe he's now got some kind of Professor Layton TV child's cartoon spin-off going on somewhere.
The Adventures of Finbar. It does sound like a children's cartoon. No,
Finbar
about
the
the Renault thing, like, it's a fine line, right? Because, you know, does working for the FIA preclude you from ever working for an F1 team? I mean, I understand the timing is quite sensitive, but I mean, what really are we supposed to expect Renault to do with this information at this point? I mean, by this point in the year, oh shit, I got a time penalty. Fuck.
Oh no.
I'm just racing for honour now.
Race for Palmer. Hashtag. Pray for Palmer.
Because, you know, it's by this point in the year, they've pretty much locked down the design for next year anyway. And of course it could inform their early season development, and we know that Renault are not shy about opening the purse strings and putting parts on the car, but still, it seems to me that it's a lot of fuss for a potentially quite marginal advantage. I mean, just because you know Concept X works, there's more to the success of an F1 component than just the component itself. It's about how it interacts with the whole rest of the car. Mm-hmm. I just thought I'd caught up to you massively, but no, it's Jolie off Palmer.
And yeah, I get, and like to take off more of your point as well. Like, you can't steal the best ideas of every other car and then like do a little hodgepodge Lego brick F1 car of all the best bits of everyone else, because they might not actually work in tandem with each other, and one design will need to kind of like, you look at someone's front wing and you see all the complexities of all the little flick ups and all of that kind of stuff. You can't stick someone else's front wing on the back of like something else and then expect it all to work flowingly beautifully. It just doesn't.
No, I mean, early 2000s Sauber was proof of that. That even if you have a near facsimile copy of someone else's car, you can't make it work.
No.
It's. I don't know. Like, part of me can understand why people would be concerned, because it is a sketchy hire in some respects. And I actually wasn't surprised when you said Renault have declared they're willing to extend his gardening leave, because they want to win, but it'd be the same if Mercedes were doing it. You don't want to be seen as unsporting.
Yeah.
Because that's another element of your corporate image, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're seen as win at all costs, then actually it's not great for your PR.
No. You want to have the guys got good kind of thing, not the we bent the rules and fucked everyone over.
Yeah. And you know, the same thing happens occasionally in football and stuff, where teams make a decision that goes against their short-term interests because, you know, for the good of the sport. And so I'm not totally surprised that we're seeing Renault take that kind of stance, because it is ultimately a marketing exercise as well as a technical development exercise. The sport element for most of the big manufacturer teams is sort of... It's there to serve a purpose. It's not really about the sport, but you still want to be respectful of the sport you're in and its fans.
Yeah, the sport drives the brand kind of thing, isn't it? I know what you mean.
The other problem, of course, is that the F1 teams themselves can probably afford to pay a lot more than the FIA does. And if they get away with this and they suddenly whether it's directly to do with the hire or not, if they start being a lot more successful, which we all expect they will be, given their improvement over the course of the season, and the fact they'll have 2 drivers next year rather than a driver and a shop mannequin. There's
Love it.
There's every possibility that other teams will begin trying to hoover up FIA personnel, and you can end up with a brain drain in the sport's governing body, which wouldn't be especially fantastic. I mean, what is this guy's credentials as well? I mean, is he hired purely because he knows this stuff, or is he a former F1 engineer that got this position, now he's entering the workforce again?
He was a former
actually unaware.
F1 engineer, so he'd already worked for Williams long term. I'm going to say Ferrari, but I might be lying. And maybe Mercedes at some point, because it was Paddy Lowe that says, "Oh, I've worked with him plenty of times before," but I wasn't sure under which guise. So, no, he's well known for being engineering. I will look at that comment, Jay, in a second. Sorry. What was I going to say? Yeah, so he's known from an engineering capacity, but it was the lol that you get from the job title that they gave him, which is technical director.
Head of cheating.
It's head of chassis development. Are you just like head of Etch a Sketch, actually, because you're just, or head of tracing paper, because it's like just going over designs.
Chief Tracing Officer.
Yeah, it just made me giggle. It was so blatant. I was like, yeah, okay, we're all chums here. Oh god, we've got a shitload of lapping to do. And what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I saw a really good interview where, because everyone was basically saying, is it just that you've all got sour grapes that you didn't think of this first? And I was like, well, yeah, actually it's quite a good idea. But we had all discussed it, and the comedy thing was that no one had kind of said, oh, if someone takes someone really, really vital from the FIA away. But apparently they'd all discussed and put in a plan of action for if an F1 team bought out Charlie Whiting. And I thought, what job, and this is my question to you, what job would you give Charlie Whiting if he was in your F1 team? Answers in the comments if you're watching.
I'd put him in charge of the remote control that turns the lights from red to green in a pit stop. Because, he's got a lot of experience in that field. I mean, yeah, you're right, because his value is lost as soon as he's not starting the races anymore.
Yeah, because, what can he do? Can he sit there and just, like, I don't know, judge Vettel every time he fucks up? Oh, that braked.
Have you seen that South Park episode with the superhero Captain Hindsight?
No.
It's a superhero whose power is the ability to tell you what you should have done.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what he would be useful for.
That is a power.
Do you know what saved you there? Because you made a big mistake.
Yes.
Like I did earlier. And you were saved because Daniel Ricciardo would not get out of my way.
I still see.
So I see him as like a Captain Hindsight figure, where he's hired purely to say, well, if I were still in charge, I would give a penalty for this. But he's got no power, so he's completely useless information.
Excellent. I need to pre-order the new South Park game that's coming out. It looks amazing. You've just reminded me. Yeah, because I just think I don't really know what I would. Maybe I would give Charlie, I don't know, director of silver-haired men. I don't know what I'd do. Oh my god, what is going on here? It's Ericsson overtaking Vettel.
That alone is good.
Oh my Christ.
Get away from me, Vettel. Get away.
Yeah, the Saubers, I think, are running 10th and 11th, Loving this.
Beautiful.
They're our next two up the road.
I'm close enough to you now that I just got DRS.
Ooh, juice.
It's like being a World War II pilot. I just flew through a cloud of your brake smoke.
I have noticed actually with my setups for this game, my brake bias, brake pressure is way higher in this game, and I can get away with it more. Whereas in previous games, I was much more lenient on brake pressure and brake bias, because you couldn't get away with it. Whereas you can lock the tyres and not suffer nearly as much in this game. Out the way, past.
There are some corners that you are so much faster than me, or at least you get such better traction on the way out of the corner that I don't think I'm going to get by you. Not least because Verline is being a prick.
Princess Pascal.
Sorry, stop the press. Breaking headline.
Well, and
Arrogant German is irritating.
did you? So there was that mini rumor that's going around where, and I think we might have discussed this in our last episode, with him going off to Toro Rosso. But now that Palmer's out, Sainz is in Renault, and it's already confirmed that Kvyat's back till the end of this year, do you think that kind of quashes that rumour down? Because that's Kvyat back in a car again.
I actually, I don't think it does. I mean, the rumour itself doesn't make a great deal of sense. I don't know what the hell is in it for Red Bull, other than to highlight the fact that they don't have enough drivers in their driver development program, which is kind of ironic, really,
So still
when you think about it.
Instead.
Because for me, I think they'll put Kvyat in there because that was the agreement, and I think they'll put him in there because, you know, it's a good way to part company.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I don't think it necessarily quashes it, but I still don't necessarily see why you would have a situation where Verline is in a Red Bull car. A Red Bull backed car, sorry. Doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me.
I wonder if you can have like a little baptism ceremony where you just become a Red Bull driver. Especially if you've been from... Because people have been dropped from the Red Bull program, like at a very high up stage. But I've never seen a driver... Oh, Kvyat! Sorry. I didn't know he was right behind. No! Ah, Kvyat!
Did we touch?
Yes.
Oh,
I've put
mate, I'm
Kvyat
sorry.
in the wall. Ha ha! Kvyat's out. Double points for Sauber.
Ruffle lol. I thought we didn't touch, actually. I didn't hear the noise. I just thought we were very, very, very close. Oh, I'm sorry, mate.
That is hilarious.
I wanted it to be a clean overtake, if I got it at all. To be honest, I didn't think I was going to get the chance.
I said no Punterino.
I said no Punterino, said Joe.
Man.
I'm actually going to watch that back from your perspective, because I don't know if I made a dick move or not, but to me, there was a gap.
Oh, we weren't far off of Hamilton.
No, do you know, I thought both of us were very, very fast, and I'm crashing into Van Dorn all the way down. I'm like waving my fists because I'm second on the podium, and then just crashing into Van Dorn all the way down straight.
And as the adrenaline dies down after another event,
Second double podium.
Beautifully done. The full Haas is on the podium.
Both buttocks of the Haas.
Oh, look. Oh, I was going to make a slightly dubious joke about what's between the two Haas cheeks. And I thought, no, Simon, don't get taken off air. Don't get...
Stop it.
He is a shower of shit. But, yeah.
10 out of 10.
Double points for Sauber, obviously. So that's why that was getting confusing. The Saubers were lapping Vettel and Bottas, and that's why they were all tripping over each other. Van Dorn was only the 3 laps down. Fucking hell. This AI problem is hilarious.
We were both faster than Hamilton.
We were.
At least on single lap pace.
Yeah, I mean we'd reversed stratage, hadn't we? So that works out. Probably.
I'm surprised he finished ahead of us by a full 29 seconds.
Yeah, I
That
only saw
actually
the
is-
checkered flag pop up actually with a couple of seconds. That must have popped for me when you went over the line.
Nah.
Bizarre. Oh, well.
Still though, I'm very sorry about punting you.
That's all right. It was funny. It's all good. What was I going to say? JOTT. I'd put Charlie Whiting in charge of loophole abuse.
Not bad. It's not bad.
Works for me. Works for me.
So, we are leading the Constructors' Championship by 23 points.
Wow. Full house. Oh, I pressed the wrong button.
Hamilton now leads the drivers with 58 points.
Okay.
You are second on 50 points.
Hey.
And I am now third on 35 points.
Hey. Not including China, which apparently has just been erased from all F1 2017 memory.
Yeah, if that hadn't have happened, then I'd be third or fourth, and you would be first.
Never mind. We don't need no
Noticeably
Chinese
so.
Grand Prix. Whatevs.
Whatevs. You know, we don't consider it a proper race, so I'm not surprised the game didn't.
No. Oh, we're off to my least favourite. Next, Spain.
Hold that thought, because after Spain we've got Monaco, and
Hold my beer.
in these cars, the sort of pace people have been seeing so far. The thing is, if there wasn't the gap between us now, like if I hadn't have made that pit stop in Bahrain, the extra pit stop, I would have still finished behind you, but the gap between us would be like a handful of points. And I actually think Monaco could, in that situation, have been the deciding round for the entire season, because I'm so slow there that if you can get even a point, it would be huge.
Yeah,
in the comparison between us. But I'm very heartened to see that now we're on sort of equal power machines and we've both got decent internet connections. We are very closely competitive with each other.
We are. And I'm liking that it's swinging penduluming between rounds as well. Because you had the pace here.
I did feel actually I had the pace. It felt good all the way round. The car just didn't seem to want to take anything out of the tyres at all. I'm pretty sure
I
they still
just didn't
showed
want you to do anything either.
And that. Well, Ombre, thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure as always, and thank you to the people that did pop in, Jay, Chimpy, and Legend of Rhino. Pleasure to have you with us. Predictions for Suzuka before we sign off.
I can't see past Hamilton, actually. His pace in qualifying was so ridiculous. Redonkulous. That I just don't see it happening. I think you're looking at Hamilton, Vettel, Verstappen for your podium.
Hamilton wins now.
Yep, Jay agrees. Hamilton wins. And I'm sadly going to be very boring and agree. I think this is Hamilton's race to lose. I think Vettel will come in second if he doesn't take someone else off. I think Bottas will crash out. He's looked like a completely nutcased granny.
He has, actually.
All the way through. Occasional flashes of speed, but more flashes of barrier. And
he's going to get third.
See, I'd now say Verstappen.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn, right? Because I say Verstappen
Verstappen
because I think Verstappen will get he'll pip Ricciardo off the start because he's too aggressive, or just the right level of aggressive, depending on your philosophical slant. But Ricciardo is the one that's always there to catch the points, and it will be a Red Bull in third, I'm almost certain.
Yeah.
And it will depend on whether Verstappen has an accident or a failure. I could see him having an accident, actually. I could.
Yeah.
In which case, it'll be Ricciardo. I don't see Kimi up there, to be honest. I wish he would be, but he just doesn't seem to have the motivation or the pace, and I don't think he could take the fight to Ricciardo, to be honest.
No. Strategy might help, but that'll be about it. And so long as they don't crash into each other, I think Force India will then be your 5-6 or whatever, because they're clearly ahead of Williams et al. I think Palmer will crash out of his last race. That's my other prediction.
Yeah.
just end it in a blaze of glory and carbon fibre, and my life will be good.
How's things going with your career mode, and what's going on your channel this week on Bray?
So career mode, I have been running several different modes. So I've been playing as Olivier Panis in a Sauber and then a Ferrari, doing like a quick career just to kind of understand exactly what the... Did I say this on air or off air to you beforehand?
Off air.
Cool. I didn't want to repeat myself, sorry. So just to kind of understand exactly excuse me, what was going on with the upgrades. So I'm kind of into halfway through season 2 of that, and it is essentially the same as 2016, where if you're in a poorer car, your development cycle ends earlier than if you're in a good car, because you've just got the same amount of upgrades throughout. And I purposely turned down the AI so that I can like battle around and just enjoy myself. In my actual career playthrough, I've got Spain next actually, because I've had a few weeks off where I've not been well, and Russia was really frustrating because I crossed the line in 8th. I had 6 seconds of penalties, which put me to 11th again.
That sucks. That sucks, man.
Yeah.
For me, my career mode, I was going to stream season 1, but then I realised that because I was playing as McLaren, and after I streamed my first round, and I came into the first race with a 25% worn gearbox and a 30% worn power unit, I thought, this is going to be a frustrating season. Can I actually present it? And as the season's gone on, I've become really frustrated, actually. I'm getting a touch of the Alonsos. Although I have got a pole position and a win. And a legit one. Like, I didn't turn down the difficulty or anything, because the AI is really bad in changeable conditions. So it was Canada. Pole and win, because it was quali was wet, dry, wet, and the race was dry, wet, dry, and I just seem to have it down, and the AI doesn't, and they stay out on the wrong tyre in the race conditions. And in quali, as long as you don't let them cheat like they do in quali, then you can beat them. But the car is hugely down on power. Like, the deficit is ridiculous, and the pace of development is quite slow. And I said, like, I came into the season claiming that I understood that, but apparently I didn't. And I'm in two minds now. I'm getting towards the end of my first season, and I'm going to start streaming again season 2 once development sort of means something. And part of me wants to stick with McLaren, but I'm very close to signing for either Williams or Renault. They're the two teams that I'm most interested. And you're doing Renault, and I'm kind of interested. I've never seen anyone do a Williams career mode. I'm sure there are videos out there, but it's a team that I never see anyone drive for. So I'm thinking of going to Williams. We'll see how it goes. In terms of my channel, obviously everyone will know that I've basically been absent since January for work and health reasons and stuff. I've been playing through Motorsport Manager again to get my head around the changes that have happened since I last played. And before I come back, what I'm going to do is try and record a lot of videos in advance, because I keep starting and then disappearing. So I'm trying to take care of that. So my aim is, in the next few months, I want to finish Grand Prix World, and I want to dive back into Motorsport Manager, and try and do it in a way where I can sort of consistently put the videos out. Otherwise, it'll be a new year, fresh start, and I'll figure out what I'm doing. But I am excited to see some more of your career mode. I do enjoy watching your coverage actually because I learn a lot about your driving.
Lack of skill in it.
No, not even that. You like the thing is like you tend to outperform me more often than not. So it's not it's just interesting to see how you take the lines differently and how you genuinely handle the car differently. It's very cool. I think if you've got an appreciation for the game, it's always fun watching other people.
Yeah.
Like not just because it's you, but like I like watching a lot of people play F1 because once you're in the game yourself and you enjoy it and you understand the mechanics of it, it's very cool to see where people are gaining and losing relative to yourself. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I recommend Jimmy Broadbent.
And also, my City Skylines video is almost finished, and that will go up. So yeah, that's about that from me.
I do love some skitty skylines. I know what I mean. I think you said titty skylines. That's why I got confused. Yeah, I recommend Jimmy Broadbent to you as I know him from other sim racing stuff, but he does some F1 videos that are quite interesting to watch because he's actually extremely fast across all different things. So yes, that's my recommendation. And what was I going to say? I don't know if you've played far enough advanced in the career mode, but if you're winning and you're tanking Van Dorn, if you're playing as Alonso, when you get to you offered first driver, after 10 races they start giving you extra development points, and then the longer you stay as first driver for a team, that bonus increases over time. Same as pit stops give you some extra development points, I believe, as well.
Oh, well, in that case, then maybe it becomes bearable to stay at McLaren.
Because it seems to.
Thanks for the heads up.
It rewards loyalty, because in my Panis playthrough that I'm doing, when I got given number one driver about 2/3 of the way through the season, because all the contracts came at the very end of the season, and I was like, oh, where am I going next year then? It all happens off season essentially. But yeah, when you look at the development grid, and I didn't notice it at all, but you've not just got up, down, left, right, you've got
diagonal.
And
yeah,
that's where those basically performance bonuses unlock. So you've got one for pit stops, one for being a first driver, one for completing practice programs, and I can't remember what the fourth one is. But yeah, take a look at those.
How did, just before we wrap up, how did your contracts work? Because you said you went to Ferrari, right? Which is the hardest team to get into in the game. Was surely they weren't your first offer, right? Do you get all the offers at the same time, or do you is there an element of risk where you wake it out?
Nope. All the offers came at exactly the same time at the end of the season.
I hate that.
So I had Ferrari basically had an absolutely terrible season, because the way how the reputation thing works is that if they're underperforming what the game thinks that they should be doing, then they want you more, essentially, because they're dissatisfied with their drivers. And so basically
makes sense.
Raikkonen and Bottas kept on colliding into each other during my career, and so they just weren't finishing. And so I was offered first driver at Sauber, and then everyone else was second driver at McLaren, Ferrari, and gonna say Williams was the other one. But I was offered 4 contracts, and it was essentially, what do you want to go for? And there was also it didn't work for me, but you've got affiliate teams. So if you're at Toro Rosso, you won't get offered second driver at Red Bull. You might get offered first driver because you're affiliated. So you'll skip having to then battle for first driver.
Yeah, because it made sense in the previous games. Like if you were at Toro Rosso, then you were more likely to get an offer from Red Bull, and if you were at Sauber, you were more likely to get an offer from Ferrari.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense. I don't think it necessarily makes sense that you go there as first driver, but it should be easier to get the the interest meter up.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me about that is that they've done it so well in the past, where you get a contract offer and you have to you can delay making a decision on it, but as time passes, you've got to make a decision, and sometimes like you might get an offer from, I don't know, a sort of second tier team, and that represents a big step up for you. But if you sign, then it precludes you getting an offer from Ferrari or whatever. And there was always that sort of tension, like, do I sign now? It's going to time out.
Yeah, this is a step back, I think. Wait until the end of the season.
It is a step back, particularly because the rest of it makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of disappointing. But no, thanks for the heads up for that. That means, in theory, at the moment it looks like at the end of my season, then I should get an offer to stay on at McLaren, and then a second driver for Haas, Renault, or Williams. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to go into season 2 and I'll begin streaming from there, and we'll see how. Once I have a better understanding of how things work from completing the first full season, then I think it presents better coverage. I think. Anyway, mi old amigo, thanks very much. It's been a delight and an honour. And although you lead me in the championship right now, I'm coming for you. Do you like my pace?
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. You guys will take care, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, 4 p.m. BST rather. Although it's not summertime at all, but you know what I mean, UK time.
UK time, it's easier.
Yeah, but we'll be discussing all things Suzuka-like and any other juicy F1 goss in the meantime. So take care all. Thank you very much, and cheers. As always, definitely zero.
Cheers.